Hey everybody, welcome to What About the Game. Today I'm going to be talking about Retro City Rampage DX on the Nintendo Switch. Retro City Rampage has been out a while, originally released on my birthday in 2012. 5 years later it has arrived on the Nintendo Switch. If you're unfamiliar with what is now quite a famous indie game, Retro City Rampage is an open world action game with an 8-bit style. Originally beginning life as a retro remake of GTA 3, it eventually morphed into its own game. Retro City Rampage is more than a game. It ascends beyond gameplay and becomes a pastiche, a love letter to action movies and 80s pop culture. The reference per second counter is off the scale, especially early on where the story is so nonsensical that although you're not particularly engrossed by it, you still want to see what ridiculous thing happens next. Everything happens so quickfire that it's incredibly difficult to follow, and I'm positive that much of the humour passed me by, but there's so much of it, you'll definitely get a laugh every now and again. The game takes place in an open world city of Threftopolis, from mostly a top-down perspective, similar to the original GTA games. You can choose whether to head to the location of the main story mission, which asks you to find parts of a time machine, or maybe you can dabble in some side missions. You have total freedom in that regard. Personally, I enjoy doing a bit of both, as even though there are 60 odd main missions to do, many of them can fly by and you'll be done with the main story in just a handful of hours. What's sad about the missions though is that they are basically fetch quests. Go here, get that. I would have liked some more inventiveness in this department, but since they fly at a million miles an hour, you don't really stop to notice what you're actually doing. Doing them is fun though, which is probably the most important thing, right? You collect over the top weapons or steal vehicles and completely annihilate everything in your path. You can shoot with the Y button, or as I prefer, use the left analog stick to make it a sort of a twin stick shooter, which is neat. There's also a lock-on system where you'll keep shooting the same enemy if you hold down the shooting button. Plus something that's rather ambitious for what is essentially an 8-bit game, there's a cover mechanic which is effective and useful for dodging and shooting bad guys. It's all round a fairly well thought out, user-friendly designed game. It's definitely retro but not archaic. There's also an odd focus on the jumping and stomping mechanic, which can be used to take out enemies with bulletproof armor and such. Like I said, it's odd since it does have its use in the game, it just doesn't really fit it, if that makes sense. I will say that, to be honest, I do find the gameplay fun, but rather quite shallow. It all revolves around destruction and violence, and that's of little consequence. People die, cars blow up, and that's about it. The different weapon variants are nice, but don't change much in the grand scheme of things. There are 3 initial modes you can play: the story mode, arcade challenges, and free roaming. The story mode is what it is and would definitely be your starting point in the game. The arcade challenges add a little spice to proceedings. Most of them need to be unlocked in order to do them, and they involve short burst challenges, usually involving as much murder and destruction as possible. Then there's free roaming, which lets you wander around the city doing anything you want. While it's nice that it's here, I only found it to be a decent distraction for a few minutes at the most. Where Retro City Rampage succeeds is in its presentation. The faux 8-bit style is glorious, to be honest, and the colours pop off the Switcher screen very well. There's a lot of love and care gone into the sprite designs and the little Easter eggs found around the city. It really does give the impression of playing an NES GTA game, which is an impressive feat. The soundtrack also has some excellent contributions from chiptune aficionados, which adds to the excellently presented package in Retro City Rampage DX. Retro City Rampage has been released on just about every console going, but as the latest release, the Switch version has some very slight tweaks in order to improve the experience, such as difficulty and the visuals. Of course, it's been released portably many times before, but the Switch's large screen makes it the best place for it by far, in my opinion. Overall, Retro City Rampage is a good, well-made game, obviously a huge passion project for the developer. The gameplay does have its charm, but to be honest, it is quite shallow. But that's not really why you'd play Retro City Rampage. You play it for the humour and references. It's the nostalgia waves that hit you time after time, and the "oh, I get that reference" phrase that you'll be saying constantly. While you may not care for the gameplay of the slightly by-the-numbers missions, you'll always have a smirk on your face thanks to the wonderfully presented 80s pastiche. Okay guys, if you've enjoyed this review then be sure to like and subscribe, that will help me out. You can read the full review of Retro City Rampage DX at whataboutthegame.com, and you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter if you want to. All the links are below. Thanks guys, bye bye.